Hey there, tenors. Welcome to our Teaching Through Repertoire series on Galactic Adventure. This is part one. We're going to go through the whole piece and just talk through it. All the new things you might need to know, any new words, any new symbols, any new notes, anything like that that maybe we haven't learned yet. We're going to go through all that. When we're done with that, we'll go section by section, and we'll do 5 more parts of this, and each one will cover a small section of the piece, and at the end we'll do a whole playthrough track for all of it. So in this one, in this part 1, we're going to just talk through some things. So if you look at the very beginning, you have a word there at the top says mysteriously. That's our tempo marking, going to tell us how fast or slow to go. It's also a style marking. It's going to tell us kind of how to play, what the music should sound like. So mysteriously is going to tell us that it's not very fast, it's slow-ish, and it's also, a little bit spooky, a little bit eerie. So it's not going to be big and loud and in your face. Even when it says loud, we don't want it to be, we want to have a little bit of mystery in there. If you think mystery, you don't usually think loud, you think what's around the corner. So that's telling us that. If you look down at 13, it says vigorously. So that's another tempo style marking, and it's telling us that we're going to go considerably quicker there. And then vigorously, kind of energetically, frantically, all of a sudden everything's going to have a lot more weight behind it, a lot more energy. You'll see a lot of accents, which we'll talk about in just a second, and your notes will be a lot different than they are in the beginning. Another thing to watch out for right at the beginning, remember, always check your time signature. In this case, it's just 4/4, so we're comfortable with that. 4 beats per measure, and the quarter note gets the beat, so that's pretty easy. And then check your key signature, maybe the most important thing you can do. You've got 1 flat in that key signature. If you remember, that 1 flat will always be B flat, and it's on that middle line, and that tells us that any note with the name B is going to be flat. So if it's on that line, it's B flat. If it's low, it's B flat. If it's way up high, it's B flat. Anything that you could call B is going to be flat because of that key signature, unless you have an accidental. You also have some accidentals in this piece. Remember, that's a sharp or a flat or a natural that comes out of nowhere and either changes the key or adds a note in. So watch out for those two, and make sure that if you need to, you go through and find any B's and write in the flats if you can't remember that. The next thing, right at the beginning there, measure 1, you've got a big bar with a 6 over it. That's telling you that you got 6 measures of rest. It's a long rest. So what you're going to do is you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4 like a measure of rest, but you're going to do that 6 times. Don't try to multiply it out. Don't try to say, 6 times 4 is 24. I'll count to 24, because you're going to get lost. You're going to get a squirrel, and you're going to get confused. So count 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, up to 6, and then you'll measure 7. You'll have your instrument up, 1, 2, and you'll play on beat 3. So you got to breathe a beat early, and you'll be ready. Measure 12. You've got a funny little symbol over there, a little arch with a dot. That's called a fermata. Say fermata. That's going to tell you that you're going to hold the note longer than normal. If somebody's there to tell you, you have a conductor or a leader in front of you, they'll tell you how long to hold it. Otherwise, the general rule is 2 times the note value. So you have a whole note there, which would be 4 beats. So that fermata is going to make it 8 beats. At measure 13, you've got a bunch of little greater than looking signs over the notes. That's called an accent. Accent means you're going to emphasize the note a little more than you normally would. So instead of just playing, you're going to just tongue it, use a little more breath, a little bit harder. Not a huge difference. And 17, you have an accent, and then the next notes have little dots over them. That's called staccato. Say staccato. Staccato means you're going to separate the notes or detach them a little bit from one another. A lot of times you'll hear short. Don't think short. Think space between them. Separate the notes. So instead of playing, play. The result ends up being the notes are a little shorter, but if you think of separating them, you'll play it a little prettier than if you think of just making short notes. So staccato means you detach the note, put a little bit of space on either side of that note. Down at measure 23, you've got lines over the note. That's a legato. That means smooth. Everybody say legato, like Mr. Legato is smooth. That means you play the notes full value, so no space in between them. Would be how you play it if there's no marking there. You have that legato, that tenuto mark, so you play full value on that note. So we call it legato a lot of times. It's also called tenuto, full value. We have some dynamic markings too, which I think you've probably learned we've talked about, but you have at the very beginning, you have an MP. It means mezzo piano. Mezzo is Italian for medium or middle, and piano means soft. So mezzo piano, medium soft. A little bit less than like your talking voice. And then right after that in measure 9, you have forte. Forte is Italian for loud. That's going to be a little bit fuller, not like you're screaming at people, but just you're trying to talk over, the crowded classroom because your voice is more important than your neighbors. What else? 31, we've got mezzo forte. Mezzo again means middle or medium, same thing. And then forte, we just learned, means loud. So instead of medium soft, here's medium loud. So we know piano is soft, forte is loud, and the mezzos are in between. So we have piano, mezzo forte, forte. If you kind of use mezzo forte as your base for everything, you'll be good to go. Think of that as just like your normal talking voice. You're just having a conversation inside, with somebody you like, so you're not shouting at them. And forte is a little louder than that. You want to be heard. Mezzo piano, you're not whispering, but you don't want the whole world overhearing your conversation. And piano, you just want you and your neighbor to hear the cool things you're saying. Measure 39, you've got some more long rests, just 2 that time, but it means the same thing. Anytime you see that number over it, it tells you how many measures you're going to rest for. At 41, you're going to need a pencil on your music stand, and there we're going to be tapping instead of playing. So no singing, no counting, just tapping your pencil in that rhythm and stomping your foot where it says. Couple new notes. At measure 8 and measure 12, you've got a C sharp. So C sharp, we know C is your middle finger. C sharp is nothing. So you got to make sure your thumb is back here and your thumb is down here holding on and your embouchure is good. Otherwise your saxophone will fall out of your mouth. But there's no fingers down for C sharp. Just keep them close by so you're ready for your next note. And then you have one more new note. You get that C sharp a few times, so make sure you're comfortable with that and you're ready for it. At the very end, your last 2 notes, you got an F sharp. And I don't think we've done that one yet. So F is 1, 2, 3 in your first finger. F sharp, you're going to switch that out for your middle finger. So it's 1, 2, 3 in your second finger. And that's your F sharp. Everything else in there I think should be pretty normal and you should know, so you should be ready to go. So once you're comfortable with all that stuff, go ahead and go look for part 2 in this, and we'll start working through the beginning of this song. See you later, tenors.